Some people will just comment things like, oh, but why are you even trying when it's up to like these big corporations? Or why are you even trying when it's up to only 100 companies? Like, your reusable straw is not going to do it. Your reusable water bottle is not going to like save these things. And when people say things like that, it's just like, oh my goodness. And you're kind of thinking to yourself, yeah, me shopping secondhand isn't really doing much if they're just kind of destructing the Amazon forest, like rainforest. But you also have to take a step back and think that you are doing this at an individual level, sure, but there's also a bunch of other people who are doing this with you. You can be sustainable the same way that you're living the life that you're currently living. And I think that anyone who's interested in anything related to the ocean, whether that's surfing or, sort of like kite surfing or windsurfing, anyone who's interested in hiking, anyone who's interested in traveling, you'll start to realize how much the earth actually impacts your hobbies and lifestyle. And if you take care of it, you don't actually have to give anything up.
Welcome to Here for More podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Krause, and this is the show where we're as passionate about personal growth as we are about saving the planet. We know that life's not just a list of boxes to check off, and we don't sit around just waiting for lightning to strike. We are action takers. We're proactive, passionate, and determined to massively impact this earth and the people on it. For as much as I've already learned throughout my own life, I know there's a lifetime more to go, which is why I'm taking this journey right alongside you. We can do the hard things we dream of. We can answer our soul's deepest callings, and we don't have to do it alone. Our journey towards greater purpose, fulfillment, and joy evolves just as we do. It starts right here, right now, and again tomorrow. This is what it means to be here for more. Hey you, do you have any plans December 11th to 18th? Join Jess and I as we host our very first surf and yoga wellness retreat this December in Troncones, Mexico. We still have space left, but spots are filling up quickly. So if you're interested, the link is in the show notes. Go check it out for more details and to learn how to register. You do not need any surf or yoga experience. This is catered towards whatever level you're at. We're working with wonderful surf instructors. I'll be teaching some of your yoga classes. It's just going to be a really, really awesome experience. Jess and I are so excited, and the humans that are already signed up are super excited as well. The only thing that's missing is you. So go check out that link. Feel free to DM me on Instagram if you have any questions. We would love to see you there. Welcome back to Here for More podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Krause, and I'm here today with sustainability blogger Miah Ké-leigh. We met online through our mutual love of the environment and all things sustainable, and I'm so excited to have her here today. She's going to talk to us about what she does and how she got into it. What does it mean to be a sustainability blogger? Miah, thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do, and also tell us where you're located, because I know we are on opposite sides of the world.
Right. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I love doing podcasts. I like listening to them. So I'm really happy to be on yours. So as you mentioned, my name is Miah Ké-leigh. I just generally go by Miah. I am a sustainability blogger and eco-content creator. And my channels that I'm primarily active on are on Instagram and also my blog. So lately, I have been shifting focus to eco-travel, cruelty-free beauty, and slow fashion. And previously, I was just a travel blogger. But with the whole pandemic starting, I was like, okay, what else can I do? And since I already had a love for sustainability, I figured, why not just make this my actual niche instead?
That's so wonderful. And I love that shift. I'm a person who loves travel as well. And so
Mm-hmm.
it has been really interesting to navigate this past year.
Right.
And surf and yoga wellness retreats are something my husband and I have started to plan. And it's been super weird to navigate, not only with the pandemic, but also with being eco
Right.
conscious, because
Yeah,
travel inherently is not that, So sometimes there's
exactly.
kind of this like almost like guilt that can come up, or some anxiety around it. So I would love to hear a little bit from your perspective and your experience. What is your take on making travel more sustainable?
I think, it's really difficult because, like you said, it inherently is not a sustainable thing to do. Luckily for us here in the Netherlands, we bike pretty much everywhere and public transport is very accessible. And because it's like such a small country and we're located close to other countries here in Europe, it's very easy for us to just take the train to France or to Belgium or to Germany, because taking the train is obviously a little bit more sustainable than flying. However, when I
Mm-hmm.
do fly to different places, my reusable straw is not going to cut it, that like that just doesn't matter anymore. So I think you can be eco-friendly in other ways. Obviously, it doesn't make up for the whole that, how do I say it? In the sense that you're flying. So obviously that's more carbon that's being emitted. But
Yeah.
personally, for me, I just kind of ditch all the paper stuff and go digital as much as I can. Pack my reusable water bottle. Like I have an extra big scarf that doubles up as a blanket,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't use the plastic wrapped ones on the plane. Just like little things that I can actually control, as well as having vegan meals. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it's up to everyone's preferences and what is accessible for them and what they think they can or can't do or what they feel comfortable doing. So it's tricky. It definitely is, and that's still something that I'm learning to navigate myself, especially now with the pandemic, because
Yeah.
so many reusables also aren't allowed. So it's really like I think what your situation is at the moment.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
absolutely is. And I appreciate that because I think there can sometimes be like this pressure around it, like I have to do it this certain way.
Right.
And maybe there is a way that we can just say, okay, we're going to do the best that we can, or we're going to do what is accessible to me at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's enough.
hmm No, absolutely. I think, especially with the eco community or hearing words like, or just buzzwords in general, like natural, sustainability, veganism, once people hear these keywords, it's kind of like you have to go all in or nothing.
Hmm.
And it's a gradual process. So I think once you learn, like, okay, you don't have to go cold turkey on this. For example, some people in my family, they don't understand why I'm vegetarian. And
Yeah.
for me, it's really like not just an environmental thing, but also a health thing. So it's just like you don't have to just suddenly stop eating meat altogether, like one day, or like you could just do a meatless Monday, for example, and just take it
Hmm.
from the, like, I think small steps really, really matter.
Yeah, and then those small steps that really resonate with you, right? That
Precisely.
feel good. Yes, that you're not
hmm
feeling like, oh, I have to do this or forced to do it. But when it's those
Right.
steps that you understand why you're doing it, then that's what's going to ultimately lead up to bigger change. So I really, I love that. I appreciate it too because that's the same way I feel. So hearing
hmm
it from someone else is so affirming, really.
Right. I like it when people can connect on that level because I think, especially in the eco community, there's such a huge pressure almost to conform to that sort of mindset. Like, if you're not fully
Hmm.
sustainable, are you even sustainable? Like
Yes.
I don't like that because you can be sustainable in so many other ways. Like, some of my biggest sustainable inspirations don't use cruelty free makeup, but I think that they are sustainable in other ways, like being vegan, for example, or just solely shopping secondhand. And then you have other people who only shop secondhand and they eat vegan and they're plastic free. And I'm like, okay, well, kudos to you because you're doing what you can. But for me, I know that certain things might not be accessible. So
Hmm.
certain things might not be within my budget. So, like I mentioned before, it's kind of baby steps until you get to the point where you want to be. And up until that point, you can look at the other people for inspiration or like tips and how to incorporate that in your day to day life.
Yeah. So how do you kind of combat that? Because I've found that in my own life, almost this like eco anxiety of
Right.
realizing like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing enough or being enough or there's
hmm
always a bigger problem that really is out of our
Absolutely.
control. Yeah. So how do you kind of combat that so you don't just let it totally overwhelm you?
I mean, I find it really difficult. I'm not even going to try to sugarcoat that because
Yeah.
this is something that I personally struggle with. And I think, I regularly on Instagram, I have these little Q&A sessions, with the question boxes. And I ask my audience, if you had any questions on sustainability or starting your sustainable journey, which questions do you have? Or like, what do you think about sustainability? Because of course, not everyone that follows me, is interested in living an eco-friendly lifestyle.
Yeah.
Um, so some people will just comment things like, "Oh, but why are you even trying when it's up to like these big corporations?" Or "Why are you even
Yes.
trying when it's up to only 100 companies?" Like your reusable straw is not going to do it. Your reusable water bottle is not going to like save these things. And when people say things like that, it's just like, "Oh my goodness," and you're kind of
Yeah.
thinking to yourself, "Yeah, me shopping secondhand isn't really doing much if they're just kind of destructing the Amazon forest, like rainforest." But you also have to take a step back and think that you are doing this at an individual level, sure, but there's also a bunch of other people who are doing this with you. So I think when you put yourself into that sort of mindset and realize that, you are one person, but for me, for example, like there are definitely days when I'm thinking, is my platform even creating any sort of change? And then some
Mm,
people send me pictures that they have bought a reusable water bottle or they're doing something sustainable that day. So with eco anxiety, I really feel like it depends on the situation, and it definitely depends on the kind of people you have in your circle. Because if
yeah.
you're having people that constantly like sort of pick out that you're not vegan or vegetarian, or that you could be doing better, you're gonna sort of think that. But you
Yeah.
really have to affirm yourself, I feel. And especially in the pandemic, I would definitely suggest, taking a step back and realizing that things are not the same as they were before. Because for me personally, I don't know if you have farmers markets in your area, but for me
Hmm.
personally, that was like my go-to source for grocery shopping. And then the farmers
Yeah.
markets closed, and I was like, oh dear Lord, I'm going to have to navigate these plastic-ridden aisles. And the thing is,
Yeah.
plastic isn't a bad thing. It's just the overconsumption thereof, right? So for me now, going into the supermarket, it feels like I'm just in some sort of horror genre like movie book, because I just focus on all the things I try to kind of cut out. But
Yes.
I also think once you realize that there are ways around it, like just buying things in cans or cardboard or glass and recycling that, then it's also okay. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I think everyone kind of, well, those in the sustainability sector sort of focus a little bit on what they're not doing, but not really keeping track of how much progress that they've made, Like even you
Yeah.
having this podcast and just talking to people about this, I think already gets certain people thinking, what can I do to
Hmm.
be more sustainable?
Oh, you're so right. And I've absolutely felt that with the grocery store and with takeout food. Because restaurants
Yeah.
were closed and you don't like, let's be real, you don't want to cook every single day of your life, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
you want to go get food from your favorite places and support those businesses.
Hmm.
And there's been more than one occasion when me and my husband will have the food and we are like holding the bag of takeout food and we're like, "Oh my gosh, it's the plastic bag and the food's wrapped in it." And it's this moment of like, oh, I can't
Right.
believe we're doing this, and we call ourselves environmentalists. But
Yeah.
we have to step back from that and realize that I love that you just said that that no plastic movement is such a big thing, but
Hmm.
you're right. It's not that all plastic is terrible. It's that there's just way too much of it. So
Precisely.
yeah, so when people say like, okay, your straw is not going to make a difference. Okay, well, like let's take it then the other way. Let's say that nobody cares about reusable straws anymore and we just all use plastic straws. Well,
Hmm.
so many of those are going to end up back on the ground, in the ocean, on the beaches, and
Right.
then any progress that we might have been making is just totally in the opposite direction. So it's like if it you might not be making a huge impact, but maybe you actually are because it could be this over here. So
Exactly.
yeah, so it can be, and it can be really hard to see too because
Right.
we can't observe all the change that we are potentially making
No.
necessarily, and it could be something that's way down the road that we start to see the benefits, but
Right.
we have to just start somewhere. And so yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think it's especially difficult if you're focusing on things like social media. And I don't mean to be like, social media is terrible, but if you
Yeah.
are in the eco space and you see other people thrifting or doing thrift flips or being super sustainable in ways that you may not be able to just yet, it can be very easy to question, am I doing the right thing? How is my sustainability journey different? Or like, can my sustainability journey be improved? So for
Hmm.
me personally, I've looked at that and I've compared myself a lot to bigger creators, because I've thought, okay, there are some things that they are doing that's really sustainable. How can I implement that into my own day to day life? But like I said
Hmm.
before, when you start with smaller actions, eventually they just kind of have a ripple effect. And especially with the things that you might love, like takeout food, like I love takeout food. So it's okay to be lenient once in a while,
Yeah.
like no one's perfect. And I think if you focus so much on just being or attaining the certain goal, then you also kind of forget the living aspect of it. Like this journey
Yeah.
isn't just supposed to be a goal to reach. Like I know so many people who are just really, how do you say the word? Sorry.
Oh,
Just
that's okay.
fascinated by the zero waste movement to the point
Yes.
where they're trying to fit all of their trash in a mason jar. And the
Yeah.
goal is so focused on just having all this trash in this tiny, tiny jar. But what about the things that you used to enjoy life with, So I think it's okay if you just have like your processed cereals or your McDonald's or whatever. Like
Yeah.
me personally, it doesn't matter because I know that
Hmm.
I'm doing other things that I can do to also help the sustainability movement and my overall health and like the planet and stuff. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of different perspectives on this, and it's very interesting to have conversations with people just so you can start understanding where other people are coming from, and also to kind of get out of that mindset that what I have is not necessarily what everyone else has accessibility to.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for saying that. It's
Hmm.
so true that social media has at times been it is at times a very toxic place because it's automatically that comparison, and it's like, oh, I'm not doing what she's doing, and
Hmm.
she's fitting all of her trash into this mason jar. And so now, it leads you to question yourself and doubt yourself. And I think it's important to remember that the word sustainability is has multiple definitions,
Hmm.
and sustainable inherently means something that can keep going, right? So
Right.
is it going to be able to keep going, you only putting your trash in that one jar? Maybe, but maybe not, because maybe you're mentally, emotionally going to suffer from that. And that's just one example. But or like, if you decided, okay, I'm not going to travel at all because,
Hmm.
or I'm not going to fly at all because it's just not eco-friendly. But
Right.
then, is that sustainable? Are you going to be suffering in other ways? So sustainability really is, it is such a broad term, and we in this movement we look at it in terms of the environment,
Yeah.
but it also is what is sustainable for your mental health and emotional health,
Precisely.
and all of that. So I love that you said that.
Yeah, I think that that's something that a lot of people tend to neglect from time to time, just focusing so much on the goal. And I've been guilty of that myself as well, to the point where I just kind of don't go to certain events or don't participate in, I don't know, whatever it is that my friends might be doing if we're on a night out or whatever, because I'm like, oh, that's not
Yeah.
environmentally friendly. But then I'm just like spending the rest of the evening thinking, oh, I could have done that. It's just, like to me, it doesn't make sense
Hmm.
because you can be sustainable, but you can still do things to enjoy life in a sustainable way. So your lifestyle really doesn't have to change that much. You're just basically having an alternative, a sustainable alternative for the lifestyle that you already have.
And I think it stems so much from that awareness,
Hmm.
that the more people that can just start to have an awareness of, okay, what is the impact of me taking this action, or getting this takeout food, or accepting this straw versus not, like just beginning that and having the mindset,
Hmm.
it starts to integrate into your daily life, and you can start to make more eco-conscious decisions. So it doesn't have to be like all or nothing, but just the awareness. Like, think about that. If humans around us, if we just all had this awareness of what we were doing, and when we saw trash on the ground, we picked it up, and the refusing a straw was just a normal thing, like
Right.
those
Right.
those things became normalized. That is how you start to make, I mean, maybe, I don't know, but maybe that's how you start to actually make an impact with those smaller things, is by building that awareness.
No, I agree.
Oh, this is so good. So now we've talked really in depth about all these different factors, and how to kind of combat some of this eco anxiety. But tell me how you actually got started with sustainability, because it is, it's something that's been around now
Right.
for many, many years, but it's just continuing to be like this hot topic. So where did it start for you?
Honestly, like it's actually, well, for me, I think it's a funny story. I don't know if anyone else thinks it's funny, but I find it funny because I was not interested in sustainability at all. I remember there was like a lot of science presentations in my high school, and a bunch of people were talking about global warming, and I was just like, okay, they'll probably fix it. In my head, I was like, people will probably fix it. If the earth is really in grave danger, as everyone says it
Right.
is, they'll probably fix it. Fast forward to 2015, I think, and I'm like, oh, you know what? This topic is actually trending. Like, people are really interested in sustainability. People are talking about veganism, and people are switching to cruelty-free beauty. I kind of want to acquaint myself with
Mm,
this for a little bit. I want to know what it's actually about, because up until that point, I had so many preconceived ideas of sustainability. In the community where I am from, it's something that's considered to be very expensive. But if you think about that
mm,
affordability aspect, the things that are considered expensive in the sustainability sphere are generally the food, for example, with vegetarian and vegan diets or lifestyles. And they're typically from brands that are heavily processed. For example, with Beyond Meat or Impossible Burgers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit more expensive than you would have if you just made a chickpea burger at home,
Right.
So I started thinking about it like that. But my actual sustainability journey started when I signed up for a conservation exchange program in Costa Rica. Now, keep in mind, I love traveling, but I was the whole point of this conservation journey was to conserve leatherback sea turtles in Costa Rica. So we were going there to clean the beaches. We were going there to kind of like observe the turtles and make sure that they were safe, because there was something wrong with the population. I'm not too sure. Oh, poachers. Yeah, there was a lot of things going wrong. So that's the reason why they had asked if we wanted to join them, like us being from my school. And I was just thinking, oh, I'm going to Costa Rica, like a little holiday. I'm going to enjoy the beaches. I get there and I just experienced this massive like confrontation. The guides, they were so insightful and they taught me so much about sustainability. And we had all these local foods and we would take these walks in rainforests and learn about the biodiversity, not only in Costa Rica, but also in different parts of the world. And that's kind of when my eyes really opened and I was like, wow, we are taking so much for granted on a day-to-day basis, because they would reuse water, they would find ways to upcycle things. Local food was more common than things that were being brought into the country, for example. Like they really cared about their community. And to me, someone who took like half an hour to an hour long showers sometimes, if I felt like I needed to de-stress, which would be, fairly frequently, someone who would do massive hauls at Primark over the weekend with some of her best friends because it was just a fun way to pass the time. And it was always nice to have something new. So I was thinking to myself, wow, like my lifestyle is the complete opposite of what I'm experiencing here. And I remember when I went back to the Netherlands after that trip, I was just like looking at all the stuff that I had in my room, and I was just thinking about what this one man had said on the trip, because we were just walking through like the forest one evening, and he was basically telling everyone to just look around, and we were all observing the nature and like the animals and the stars and stuff, and he was like, we can be happy with very little if we just appreciate the view. And that kind of stuck with me, because when I went back to the Netherlands, I looked around and I just thought all of the things in this room used to be money, and that's such an interesting way that I kind of phrased it for myself, because I just looked at everything, like all these, I don't know, what they call those popular palettes, like that everyone had, the naked palettes.
Yes, the eyeshadow.
I had like 3 of them, and I just looked at them and I was like, I could have done something else with that. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm definitely not shaming anyone that's interested in makeup, because I'm super like interested in everything that's considered girly, like makeup and things like that. But I was just looking at that and I was like, wow, like all of the things that I had in my room, I wasn't actually content with. And I realized that the things that I had and what I was buying was just kind of like because everyone else was doing it, and it was an easy way to have like a fleeting bit of happiness because you purchase this and it gives you an adrenaline rush. And I'm not saying like everyone has to become a minimalist or whatever, but I'm saying once you kind of shift your perspective and think about the things that matter, like the things that, well, I mean, that might matter to some people too, but the things that really matter in the grand scheme of things and what you feel comfortable with and what brings you joy, for me at least, it really shifted my perspective. And I realized once I started educating myself about, these fast fashion trends and stuff like that, and all the clothing items that I would buy so much of, and started looking into the history, I was like, is this something I actually enjoy, or is this something that magazines that I was obsessed with or television shows that I really enjoyed told me to like because I'm female? So ever since then, I started looking at the things that I was purchasing. And that also tied back into eco-anxiety, because I was trying to be sustainable, but my lifestyle and my whole personality that I had curated based on like television characters and like people in music and stuff like that, that conservation trip for me was just such a massive eye-opener, and it really shifted who I was as a person. So that changed a lot. I know that was quite lengthy, but really, yeah.
No, that was wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I think
Hmm.
it's a really relatable story that a lot of people go through, whether they're already, kind of come to that other side of now, they're passionate about the environment. That's kind of where I'm at now.
Hmm.
But maybe someone's listening to this who is still on that other side and
Right.
they're just starting to learn about, they hear the buzzwords all the time of zero waste and eco-conscious, and they're feeling that
Precisely.
like, I don't know where to start. Or even feeling some of that guilt around, like, well, the things that I really love, like whether it
Hmm.
be fashion or makeup or travel, those things I love, like, there's a non-sustainable, with the fast fashion world
Right.
component to them. So how to kind of combat that and not give up those things that you do really love, but
Right.
find a better way. And that sounds like it's been a lot of what your journey's been, is like, I don't need to give these things up, but is there a better way to do them? And then educate people as I go through the journey.
Hmm. No, precisely, because for me, one of the things that I really struggled with and had a lot of self doubt with when I started this eco journey was, is there a space for people like me in this journey? Is there a space for people who are interested in fashion, interested in makeup, interested in traveling? These sort of feminine, well, with the exception of travel, but these inherently feminine things, like if you
Mm,
look at my Instagram page, for example, a lot of the colors that I use are typically described as feminine, like a lot of pastels, white, pinks, and if you look at
yeah.
most eco bloggers, you will see that the color palettes are usually browns, greens,
Yeah.
whites, very minimalistic. And I didn't want to do that because I felt that the aspect of sustainability that I have is something that I hope is relatable for other women, especially, and I think that when it comes to this eco niche, it's almost like you have to conform to being a minimalist or you have to conform to being zero waste. And although that is great, for me, it just personally isn't appealing. I like
Hmm.
beauty, I like fashion, I enjoy thrifting, I like all the things that I used to do before, but now I've just found a more sustainable way to do it. So all the makeup items that I used to have, I research brands. I'm mostly like cruelty free and doing vegan stuff
Hmm.
now with when it comes to shopping, of course. And when it comes
Yeah.
to clothes, instead of going on these massive shopping sprees at Primark, I started saving for more quality pieces that are also ethical, or just kind of thrifting or going on Depop or Vinted or Poshmark. And with traveling, I mean, like we discussed earlier, that's still something that I need to work on. But I think that the space has such a, I don't know how to describe it, but I almost want to say such a defined way of looking at it, that
Yeah.
when you mentioned earlier the way that we describe sustainability is something that we all need to think about. I like the way that you put that because to me, I it makes me really feel like, there isn't a space. So you have to create that yourself because you can be
Yeah.
sustainable the same way that you're living the life that you're currently living. And I think that anyone who's interested in anything related to the ocean, whether that's surfing or, sort of like kite surfing or like windsurfing, like whatever, water sports, anyone who's interested in
Hmm.
hiking, anyone who's interested in traveling, you'll start to realize how much the earth actually impacts your hobbies and lifestyle. And if you take care
Yeah.
of it, you don't actually have to give anything up.
That hits so hard. That hits so hard and so close to home, because I know that me and the people listening, these are large things that define us.
Hmm.
We do enjoy travel. We enjoy the outdoors, and that is
Right.
exactly our motivation to protect the planet. Right, is so that we can continue to enjoy what this beautiful earth has to offer.
Hmm.
Um, but it makes me so happy that you have kept that piece of you, that piece
Hmm.
that is you, your style, your values integrated as you've built your brand, because it is so hard, or it is so easy to lose ourselves in just, this is the way
Precisely.
it needs to be. And so
Right.
I never really connected that until you just said it, but you're right. Like, there are the pinks and the girlier side,
Hmm.
girlier.
Right. No, of
but
course, I have to use that very loosely.
Yes, right, loosely.
Hmm.
But you're right. Like, it is, that feminine touch is there, and that absolutely is serving an audience. I can see it so clearly on your page that is, and I love it too. So to keep that, like, how can we take what we love and what our values are and whatever that is, and just put that in a more sustainable light, like make those gentle shifts rather than this total 180 in a way that doesn't actually really feel good or fit us. And then we're trying to fit into a box that
Yeah.
doesn't resonate with us. That will not be sustainable.
No, absolutely not. And I honestly think that that would cause even more eco anxiety because it's just
Yeah.
not who you are. And for a while, I tried that. Like, I tried the whole minimal thing. I tried the beige, the whites, the blacks.
Yeah.
Just, but after a while, I was just thinking, what am I doing? I was losing myself. I was losing the reason why I started creating content about sustainability. And it was no longer about sustainability, but rather about, fitting into this eco space and trying to connect with other eco bloggers because I was like, oh, will these people accept me? And then I was like, why would they accept me if I'm not even accepting myself, And that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
when I had this whole like brand makeover, this brand like image redo. And I started going back to the little pink touches here and there because I was just thinking to myself, I'm sure that there are a lot of other people who are interested in sustainability, but they might not find that very common aesthetic appealing. And I think it's very
Yeah.
important for us to discuss sustainability as an aesthetic because lately it's also become a trend. And whether or not we think that's a bad thing is very I think it varies, because it's up for
Yeah.
debate. Some people will say yes, some people will say no. Personally, for me, I don't care too much because I think if anyone's trying to be sustainable, I consider that to be a good thing. But I
Mm-hmm.
also see the other side of the coin. I really feel that, when you're starting your sustainability journey, there has to be some sort of representation for you. And I hope that I can be that
Mm-hmm.
representation for other women who consider themselves to be feminine and who want to be eco-friendly but don't really know where to start. The same way that I look up to other bloggers like Thrifts and Tangles, for example, who's one of the few bloggers of color in the sustainability movement that
Mm.
I've noticed because, you know, sustainability has also previously been described as a very elite white thing. And I think
Yes.
once you push past those barriers and sort of realize this is something for everyone, and a lot of people of
Yeah.
color have incorporated sustainability in their lives for a very long time. And people practice sustainability on a day-to-day basis, but they don't even realize it because they're thinking about the financial aspect of it.
Yeah.
So, there's all these like little things that we can touch on, but at the end of the day, I think everyone is sort of sustainable, whether they realize it or not. But once you
Yeah.
put the word on it, then it kind of adds a little pressure.
Yeah. And you want to be able to see yourself in the space, if
Right.
it's only this like white elitist, super expensive, like that's not only not sustainable, it's not accessible, and you don't, not everyone fits into that box.
Yeah.
There's tons and tons of people that do not fit that
Hmm.
box. So how can we bring it into, and to have that representation?
Hmm.
So it's so wonderful to see more of that, and you putting your personality into your brand. That it
Thank you.
is
Yeah.
inevitably attracting more people that then will be able to see themselves
Hmm.
in the same way. So something that just came up for me is kind of this, there, as we've mentioned, there's so many buzzwords now, and a lot of
Right.
brands just stapling on like eco-friendly or sustainable or something, and some of that is definitely greenwashing,
Oh, absolutely.
and it's not accurate. So I'm just kind of curious, where do you kind of start with that so that you're not just giving into the natural labels on things that are not actually accurate.
I think for me personally, I mean, maybe for anyone that's interested in like eco content creation or blogging in the sustainability field, I think once you start doing partnerships with people and with brands
Mm,
specifically, then greenwashing becomes a little bit easier to identify because you start really researching the brand thoroughly. Because you lose
yeah.
credibility if you're posting about something or if you're getting paid to talk about something that's eco-friendly and then it's not. So that is something that I'm
Yes.
very careful with. But before I started, this whole blogging journey, and I was just interested in sustainability as an interest and not just a blogging hobby as well, I think I was so clueless. I would see something say vegan, I'd be like, yeah, that's right, it's vegan. Or something was cruelty free, and I'd be like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. And I think it's really difficult to identify because brands are so smart. And with a lot of certifications, you can just pay someone to do something, and as long as you have like a certain ingredient or a certain location on there, you're good to go. So it is very, very difficult. But I think that there are certain ways to look at it. If you look at the ingredients, for example, if you look at the company, and if you research that company's parent company, ultimately the sources tend to reveal themselves. So, for example, something that I looked at was H&M's sustainable collection. I used to be a lover of H&M back in my fast fashion whole days, and when they came out with an eco collection or eco conscious collection, I forgot what it was called. I was like, oh yeah, I can shop at H&M again because they're sustainable now. And I was just kind of blindsided because I was like, oh, but they say that they're sustainable, so of course they're sustainable. But then I looked this up and I was like, okay, they're literally like not even paying their garment workers a living wage. And all of the textiles that they're making is like polluting the planet. And I was just like, oh, it's a learning curve. But I think when you think about it like that, and also when you start recognizing that a lot more brands are starting to kind of slap on these labels because they are realizing that, well, many of them, I think, are realizing that sustainability is important, but their business model cannot sustain sustainability,
Yes.
So they're going to try and find loopholes. And I think that that is worth commending as well in terms of recycling things. But of course, especially with the case of fast fashion, it's going to be much more difficult. So again, you really just have to do what you can and really educate yourself about the companies that you're supporting.
Yeah, that definitely goes back to that awareness, just starting to build that the label might not be accurate, which is unfortunate, but the more that we can, exactly as you just said, educate yourself and stemming down to that, just being conscious that, right? Like it's right in the word eco-conscious, right?
Exactly.
We're just aware of what is happening around us and not blind to consumerism and to marketing and all of that is a really key piece for sure. So do you have any final kind of thoughts or tips for anyone who's, whether they're new to this journey or they're way into it, just like maybe a takeaway that you've gained being, an entrepreneur in this space?
I think, for me, like how I started, I don't know how you started, actually. I would love to talk about that if you have time. But for me, how I kind of stumbled across this, aside from the conservation trip, was through Lauren Singer on YouTube. And she makes very, very short videos. They're like 2 to 3 minutes long. So if you check those out, then you can. I mean, some of them, I think for me, are personally unattainable, like the mason jar thing. So if you don't think you can commit to that, then of course, there are other ways that you can be sustainable. But just search zero waste on Pinterest, search zero waste on YouTube, like these sort of keywords, or even hashtags on platforms like Instagram, or even We Hearted or Tumblr, if anyone still uses that, really has a lot of resources in them. And I think platforms like Pinterest, We Hearted, and Tumblr are so easily dismissed because they're so easily forgotten about. But they actually contain a lot of accurate, factual, and even like certain cases that have been researched before. So I think it could be interesting to give that a look. Then again, also, just really educating yourself and reading about it, whether that's online articles or actual books. Once you just look at documentaries, then I promise it's just going to open a whole new world for you. I definitely recommend Sweatshop. It's a really, really good documentary, particularly if you are interested in fashion. That's kind of how I came about this as well, because Sweatshop is about, I think it's a Norwegian documentary, if I'm not mistaken. It's about some really, well-known Norwegian or Scandinavian bloggers, fashion bloggers, and they go to Cambodia and they see how their favorite brands make their clothes. And they end up creating the clothes in the same working conditions as the garment workers. So after those women come out of this program, a lot of them actually launched their own ethical clothing brands, or started teaching their communities about ethical clothing consumption, which I think is a very big eye-opener.
Yeah. Those are such great resources, and it definitely makes this whole world more accessible, right? Because so much of that information is free. And that is actually where it started a lot for my journey. My husband actually majored in environmental science in college, and it was something that he was really passionate about, but it was also kind of like an afterthought. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't so front of mind. And just like with recycling, like that has been a part of my community and where I've grown up since, for my whole life.
Right.
But it was just like something that was there. It wasn't a lot of thought that went into like, okay, why is this happening? Why is this so important? And kind of like you said earlier, that this idea of climate change is like, oh, well, we're going to fix that.
Yeah.
So that really resonates with me. And the older that I've gotten, that, my husband and I have gotten, the more
Mhm.
that we learn and the more that we see these issues come up, and we start witnessing like different natural disasters, fires and hurricanes and rising sea levels and all this
Right.
stuff. It all of a sudden, it was right there in front of us and we
Yeah.
couldn't ignore it. And so that's how it started. And it was just very similar to your journey, just starting to take things one at a time. Okay, how can we make this a little better? And that is really how we've been able to be. I mean, of course, it's a lifelong journey, but that's how we've been
Mhm.
able to start to find success with it, in that it integrates into our life pretty seamlessly, is by taking things one step at a time. Both him and I are vegan. I've been vegan for over 3 years now, and that
That's
was something
amazing.
that if you asked me that, though, like 5-10 years ago, definitely 10 years ago, like never that would have been a part of my life. But I just started learning about it and
Mhm.
couldn't ignore what I was learning. And I started with vegetarian, and I was
Right.
like, let me just see how this works, and it went from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what my journey's been like. And that's definitely the advice that I tend to give to people, is just start with one thing that feels important to you and go with that. And it's a ripple effect, because you'll start to
Mhm.
notice it in all the different areas of your life. I didn't know about fast fashion for years. Like, I didn't even know that. And then I
Oh,
started to hear the
same.
buzzword and I was like, what is this? So
Exactly.
you got
Because
to
it's just
start
clothes.
somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
precisely. Yeah, because you just think of
Yeah.
it as, clothes, and you just think of it as food. But once you realize like what you're actually paying for, I
Yes.
think that's when, for a lot of people at least, I think that's when things drastically change. So, when you really educate
Yeah.
yourself, then I think it becomes a little bit easier. And the
Hmm.
thing is, accessibility is very limited for a lot of people. So again, do
Hmm.
what you can with what you have. But if something, for me at least, during the pandemic, just like a little tangent, but I'm vegetarian. But during the pandemic, I ordered sushi for the first time, I think, in 3-4 years, and I broke my
Mm,
vegetarian streak. And the thing is, a lot of people think that vegans and vegetarians don't enjoy the taste of meat, and I think that becomes
right.
normal after a long time, right? Because it's just like it kind of puts you off because like the history behind it. But many
Yes.
of us grew up eating it, so it's
Yeah.
not like that was a problem. But I remember when I had that, I was just thinking to myself, "Oh, this is so good! Like, why am I following through with this lifestyle?" And I think when you realize or kind of research what actually goes into the industry, then
Hmm.
like I said before, it just has a ripple effect. So
Yeah.
starting with those documentaries, having conversations with people, and just ultimately continuously educating yourself really helps.
Yeah, it definitely brings you back to that why. Like, why is this so important? Why are we making the commitment to do these seemingly little tiny things? So I so agree with you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Miah, for being here. Before I let you go, will you please tell us where we can find you online and read your blog and all of that?
Yeah, sure thing. So my website is www.earthtomia.com, and my Instagram handle is the same. And you can also follow me over on TikTok and Pinterest. All of my handles are just at earthtomia, and it's Mia with an H. If anyone has any questions or would like to continue discussing this, or just have any questions on how to start your sustainability journey, definitely feel free to send me a DM or something. I would love to have a conversation because this is something I'm passionate about. And if I can help you start your journey, of course, like I would love to.
She's not lying, Miah. You're such a sweet human. So thank you for that. And thank you for being here and for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a lot of fun.